Welcome to Activate Yourself with Geeta Sidhu-Robb, where we feature otherwise normal people who, because of events in their life, have turned left and done unusual, inspiring, incredible things. Like build a business, become a happiness expert, marry a prince, create an empire, or like your host, set up a health and wellness business, Nosh Detox. Here's your host, Geeta Sidhu-Robb.
Hi, my name is Geeta Sidhu-Robb, and I would like to welcome you to Activate Yourself, because I know that in this day and time, more than ever, what we actually need is inspiration. And inspiration is this really funny word where people are like, can you be inspiring? No, I don't know how to be inspiring. But what you can do is end up being inspiring because you have belief systems. And those belief systems push you to act in a particular way, push you to behave, push you to make changes. And those changes end up creating immense amounts of inspiration for other people. So every time when I get on this show, my job, I feel, is to bring people to you that will change your life. They will make you look at your life differently. They will make you, which seems a bit of a tall order. Turns out, weirdly, it's not that tall of an order for our next guest. I think she does that on Sundays, and then she does a bit extra on Monday, because kind of that's how she seems to roll, which is a really lovely thing. And it touches on topics that are so dear to my heart, because the way women are, the way women function, the way women are not seen and not heard, and the way our issues as women somehow don't quite count. We're like being difficult or emotional. And you know, I'm like, how big is that box you would like me to stand on and talk to you from? And how loud and how big is the megaphone? So that, as you know well, is where I come from. So here is somebody who I think has me beat, which brings me immense joy. Let me introduce you to the wonderful Celeste Mergens. Celeste, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to be with you.
I mean, I was doing the background work on you before, we came on the show, and it was so funny because everything was a bigger statistic than the time before, because you created Days for Girls International, and it's a global award-winning organization. It's reached more than 3 million women and girls in 145 countries. And I just love every single statistic in that place. Now, you're American and you are in Washington State at the moment. What makes you get up and go and take on the world to go and fix ultimately menstrual issues or create more balance in menstrual equity around the world? What happened? Why did you do this?
I certainly didn't plan it. Isn't it wonderful how life does that to you? Yes. And I actually thought that my season for that level of change had passed, that I'd chosen a family, that I'd chosen local service. And however, having been raised in poverty, I really did constantly consider how to reverse cycles of poverty. So one of my master's degrees became studying global sustainable development and how we could create solutions that were sustainable for our planet and, importantly, sustainable for ongoing results. Okay, so I've been working on...
Let me stop you for a moment. The simple fact of being brought up in poverty and then you going through an education system like the US, in itself, that story is intense grit and resilience, because the US is not joking when it comes to kill you over education fees, right?
Absolutely. Here's the truth. You probably know, having been in Kenya for part of your life and Malawi for part of your life, but it's here in the US too. It's everywhere in the world that if a family has scarce resources or mental health issues, both of which were happening in my family with my parents, you do not have access to education in the same way. We moved 32 times before I was 13. So learning was by sheer determination. And we do have free education, so I was able to access it. So you're absolutely right. What a privilege to have the ability to do that and then to go on to higher education.
So where is it that the education is free in the US?
In the US.
Where? Up to what level? Because I thought your universities are so expensive.
Oh, so expensive. Well, up through the 12th grade. University for me, I had grants and scholarship.
Oh, fabulous.
I was so fortunate to have that, but I did drop out at one point because of a major familial catastrophe. And then came the gift of going back. Actually, when I was 42 years old, I went back for my first master's degree. First one was creative writing and literature, which has paid off for not only writing for the nonprofit and knowing how to communicate what it is we were doing and to report how we were doing it, but also for the book that I just wrote about the impact that it's made. So who knew that? And then the second that I did was global sustainable development. So when I finally got to get back in there and finish, I went all in.
It's very true, actually. I've heard that again and again, that by the time you go back, you understand the privilege that is education, right? It makes a theory
it's so true. It's so true. And you find it delicious because you're choosing what you want and you're really clear on what you want.
So one of the things that, because I grew up in an extremely wealthy family. And when I walked out of my marriage, my 3 children and I ended up homeless. And there was a level of poverty that we lived with. And one of the things I find really interesting is that it is absolutely incomprehensible, I think, to the majority of people, what it is like to be a poor woman. And the literal level of helplessness, and a poor mother is even worse. But there is, and do you see that? I think that people don't understand that. I see again and again, because of the circles that I live in and move in, where people are like, oh my God, I'm so poor. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, well, you just don't get it. Or if you didn't give poor people handouts, they'd be fine. No. Do you not find that?
Oh, absolutely. And what really concerns me is how we're kind of, at least here in the US, moving on past women's rights to focus on other rights. And you're like, you don't understand. We have just scratched the surface. All over the world, the rights of women are really considered a non-issue. One of the worst, sorry to go to a worst. Maybe I shouldn't go to the worst. Do I have a permission to go to the worst?
Go all the way you want to go, babe. You go.
One of the worst.
What we want.
Right, recently in Jordan, I'd say about 2 years ago, maybe 3, there was a woman the issue came to court because she was being punished by her husband. He was threatening to gouge out her eyes as punishment. She, as a newborn mom, pled, please let me care for you. I won't be able to care for you. I won't be able to care for the baby. And this man cruelly decided to follow through with his threat. And it actually became a matter of court to discuss whether he should be punished. Now, thankfully, the court decided he should be, but it wasn't a given because she was a woman. If she was a man, it would have been by law a given that there would be punishment. Exactly. But because she was a woman, this had to be a very serious question. All over the world, women don't have the same access. We do not have the same standards of pay. We're still paid less almost everywhere. And it's so important that we find the barriers for inequity and that we recognize that when you lift a woman, when you lift a girl, you lift the whole community. And there's data on that around the planet. So I'm really grateful to have found one of those keys. And honestly, I didn't find it, it found me.
How did that happen?
So I was helping in Kenya. I was helping a very rural community have access to water and agricultural means that they could sustain themselves. And in that process, was invited to see an orphanage. And at first I was hesitant to go, but I believe in saying yes. So we ended up at the orphanage, fell in love with the children, tried to give them sustainable solutions as well. And then in 2008 in Kenya, there was a post-election violence that erupted because they were questioning the outcome of the results of the
we were there then.
Right? You were there. Oh my goodness. So you saw this. Mm-hmm. So during this ridiculous violence over whether a campaign was correct or not, or a result was correct or not, 500,000 people were displaced. And those people were, some of them, orphans and children. So this orphanage went from 420 children to a reported 1,400 kids. In the process of trying to help them, we were out of resources now, and I got a call that they were completely out of food and had been for 2 days. As a woman who has experienced as a child going without food for days, I know how that hurts, how you can't think of anything else, how it derails even sleep. And so I wanted to help so much, had no more resources, went to bed still pleading for some kind of genius idea to raise more money for them. And then woke up with the thought, have you asked what the girls are doing for feminine hygiene? I literally gasped, ran to the computer to ask, and learned that they were sitting on pieces of cardboard for days. It turned out there were 500 girls sitting on cardboard for days because they didn't have what they need. They couldn't go to school, classroom.
Yes,
they couldn't care for themselves. So we knew we needed something. We were able to raise money for food and for pads. And then it was just clear to me that, well, what do they do next month? What do they do every month? They would use it for food, and rightly so, if we sent more resources. So how do we make sure their needs are cared for month after month? So we made the first washable Days for Girls product. Today's version lasts up to 7 years. But as we met them, we talked about the education. What is a period? And there's nothing to be ashamed of. Without periods, there would be no people. And this is how your amazing body is working. And then afterwards, the girls were cheering that they had a solution. And the first girls came to the door and said, before you came, we had to let them use us if we wanted to leave the room and go to class. And I'm hoping that didn't mean what I feared it meant. And it turned out they were being sexually exploited in exchange for a single disposable pad.
Okay, we're going to go on a quick break. So we're back. When you say that what you create, I'm trying to understand, did you create a product that these girls could use?
We did. We created a washable pad, an innovation that was able to be used month after month. Now, I have to confess, the first design was not brilliant. And I can say that because I designed it. But with ongoing design and their user feedback, we ended up with an patent award-winning design that's proving to last up to 7 years.
Oh, I love that.
It's been amazing. The first girls really gave feedback of what was working and what was not working. And we kept that pattern up, asking could we make this product better.
And what's the call?
It's called a Days for Girls pad. It's called Days for Girls because it gives them back their days and they can use them however they'd like.
That is so fascinating.
The days, not the pad.
Yeah, exactly. And what do you buy back your time. And so How does it work now? Like, how does this process work? What do you do? How do you distribute the product, and what happens? Tell me more about the Days for Girls as an organization.
Days for Girls is actually multifaceted. We do advocacy around the world for menstrual equity. We call in volunteers and communities wherever they live to not only do advocacy within their governments, their community, and people they meet, and shatter the shame around periods all over the planet. We have volunteers literally on almost every continent. And they also work to make the Days for Girls kits, and those are sent generally for local use or refugees, for emergency settings, and also to countries where we don't have an enterprise. Because the other arm of Days for Girls is creating local social enterprises where they make the kits. They work with the local governments and agencies and Days for Girls to fund them so that they can be the ambassadors, bringing the education and the product and the conversations that shatter the shame to the communities they live in. So far, we have reached 145 countries on 6 continents.
So actually, I'm looking at this here. This is the Days for Girl pads, which is it's DFG pads. It's a washable, reusable menstrual health product. I didn't even know that you had created this before we came in the conversation. So I love that. And where is it being made? Where is it that you make them?
All over the world. So people in the UK make them with Days for Girls UK. People in Canada and Australia and New Zealand and the US. people in Guatemala and Nepal
Oh, I
and
love that.
Uganda and Kenya and all over the world. And we assist with the supply chain, creating massive volume. So we're taking advantage of the massive volume to reduce the cost and increase the quality. And it is an effort that is level 12 3D Tetris.
I can
But
imagine
well,
because you're CEO of a multinational enterprise at this point. And
I
is it
am, and I have been.
self-sustaining?
I Pardon?
Is it self-sustaining financially? How do you support it?
No, we actually have the two things that you should know. First, in answer to that question, contributions make it happen. Corporate sponsorships, and opportunities to engage in grants, and also about a year and a half ago, I got the gift of seeing Days for Girls move to another CEO sustainably, and getting the gift of focusing on being the founder and doing the book tours for the new book that came out in October, and focusing on my family while supporting Days for Girls. So really wonderful to see that ongoing strength of Days for Girls.
I love that. So you create this product, you start sending the product. There is a place that's really interesting to me around menstrual health, which is that when you're looking at poor women, we focus more on giving poor women food. Whereas what actually dealing with menstruation helps is gives them freedom. And then they have the freedom to find their own food at some level as well. But that freedom is so brutally curtailed when they don't have the menstrual support.
Right? And who would have guessed that something we don't want to talk about is so pivotal to their ongoing strength and health? A moment that was unexpected was in Dominican Republic, where a cruise ship would come by, and on the places where they would stop, this woman would said that they braid hair for people, the tourists that come. But she said, only when I'm pregnant do I not have to worry about leaving the beach for a long time and my children being hungry because I cannot work because I'm on my period. I'm so happy. I'm pregnant right now, but I need one because when the baby comes, I will be back to struggling because my husband does not help. So over and over, all over the world, menstrual care resources are so important. Without them, you can miss school, or even it's just trying to use something that doesn't work and you're not having the confidence you would have if you had something secure and reliable. The stress of not knowing, will I have something next month? Not knowing where to dispose of products because there is no way. And the cultural community shame is so big. Not trying to use things that cause harm to your body, corn husks, corn cobs, rocks, feathers, sitting on a pile of sand. It just diminishes their opportunity to live the strength of their full days with dignity. What a wonderful thing to know that something simple and direct can give them back opportunity to earn.
Yeah, no, I agree entirely. Tell me about you as a person, because obviously you created this and you drove this, and you tend to flip by your immense achievements quite fast in this conversation. So it's like corralling you and pulling you back down and going, sorry, open that up again. So what makes somebody that comes from poverty and looks at this suddenly decide to create this immense global organization?
It happens step by step, which I think is such a beautiful message from the book and the journey. We don't have to start out to grow a global movement. And when we step up where we feel called and we say yes to the opportunity, we recognize that there is no one that could tell you you are not capable or worthy of the thing in your heart, that you don't have the skills. I had people ask me that at first, because what happened was I got home and told them that the girls were being exploited, told the people that had helped. There were a lot of people who had helped with the first washable kits, and they were like, oh, that can't be. That just can't be. And so instead of just saying, yes, it is, did what I do, I invited them to ask others who are facing this. And soon all over the world, it's happening in India, Yes, it's happening in Guatemala. Yes, it's in Uganda too. Yes, it's in all over the world. And so I shared the pattern. I knew how to do coding for uh, websites, and I created a way for people to access the pattern, the education, and started taking in feedback from around the world. How did it go? What did they say? How could we improve this? One of the key pieces has been to recognize that it's not me, it's the power of we, and to give them credit for what happened, to share with them the stories, these are the results, to recognize that it's really inviting people when they're building something, not alone. And I love this truth that has been proven with Days for Girls because it explains the real hope that we have for changing some very difficult things happening in our society. We can change things when we, instead of focusing on what we hate, and instead of siloing to what we fear, if we focus on what we would love to have happen, miraculous shifts can happen. If we focus on what we want and move the puzzle pieces to build it, instead of blocking ourselves from others, instead of siloing off, we bring the pieces together and trust each other. 3.2 million people and a global shift in a stigma that's arguably one of the largest in the world because we trusted each other, because we insisted it wasn't about our differences. It was about a global trust of the wisdom of women all over the planet.
But I have found, I must say, that there is more that connects us than divides us. I have found that. And I think that that is why sort of the calamities of poverty and pain and all those things happen, because it teaches us compassion, it teaches us understanding, and it also, the thing that I sort of didn't believe was that it really teaches us to receive. And it's one of the things I think as women we're incredibly bad at, because receiving feels that we're vulnerable. It puts us in a place where we feel uncomfortable. And in fact, if we're going to give, the starting point of giving has got to be receiving. And you've got to, the power of we means, well, I'll let you help me and you help me and I help you and I help you, right? There isn't a we if we aren't willing to receive as well. Just giving, it becomes then that horrendous donor stuff, which is
well said,
deeply patronizing and you know, not helpful in any way. So
that's
we're
right.
gonna just quickly go for a break, and then we're gonna come back, and I want to understand more because in your new, I want to talk about your new book. Let's talk about that.
Okay.
So we're back. I want to understand more about your book, and also because there's a lot of personal stuff that you've done around healing yourself, and understanding that you can be the best version of you, because I do believe that. I've never understood when people are, can you be inspiring? I'm like, no, I don't know how to do that. But what I can do is show up and have this conversation and walk this walk and talk this talk, right? So tell me about you as the woman in this process.
It's so interesting because you're absolutely right. I think that when you have the courage to look at the shadows within you, the fear you have, I honestly, we were built with a brain that is a first responder. As first responder, it defaults to fear, trying to keep us safe. That looks dangerous. That looks dangerous, right? And if you have trauma in your life, and who among us does not, then it's easy for us to react. We have to intentionally make the decision that we are going to buckle fear up in the passenger seat and say, you stay there. I've got control of the radio, the steering wheel. I recognize I have fear. I see you. I feel you, fear. And I am choosing to trust the path that I'm going on. And I'm going to invite other people. I'm going to trust them. I had days in this process when I actually had a health challenge show up, a serious health challenge. And the day I did a TEDx talk, I was having a seizure earlier in the day.
Oh, Lord.
But I believe in saying yes. I believe in not allowing myself to have an excuse, but rather to say, what if I did succeed? What if I was able to help more people find this? And so that was tryout day. And they actually said later that if they had taped the tryout, it would have been, gotten millions because it was so clear and concise. I trust that if we show up, like you just said, if we keep paying attention to when we have a part of us that says, who thinks you can do that? Who do you think you are? The part of us that whispers, that part, say, pay attention, stop and go, wait, where did that come from? Do I really believe that I might not be able to do this? No, I do not. I heard that. I saw that tape just run past, that's a powerful moment. Can I share with you one that happened? Just before I'd written the book? I wrote it in 4 years of efforts in hotel rooms, in along the path, everywhere I went. If I had a few minutes, I would do that instead of watching a movie on some of these flights that are 15 hours long, right? And I was, as I wrote that, I was really finished. I'd done 4 different versions. It had had interest from HarperCollins. They didn't get back. And then I was sitting with someone doing an important technique that's helped days for girls called a time machine, where you go, it's 10 years from now when we've reached every girl everywhere, period. Who did we meet? What partnerships did we make? You know, that kind of thing. Well, I did this for the book. It's 3 years from now, and this book is a bestseller. And I love my agent and editor, and I love the movie that's coming out about it. And so through my mind went the thought, well, that would be interesting. How will you have a bestseller and believe that you would rather die than think you're more important than someone else? And I went, wait. What was that thought? And then literally talked to myself inside saying, okay, so Celeste, does that mean you believe someone with a bestseller is better than others? No, I don't believe that. Does that mean you believe someone with a movie about a documentary is better than someone else? No, I actually love those. I want them to be my friends, but I don't think they're better than anyone else. And I was just this thrill of, I could have a bestseller. And it was, I am not kidding, I'm not exaggerating, there are witnesses, within hours, I had an agent, within hours. And within 4 days, a meeting with the man that would be the publisher of the book. And it's been distributed through Penguin Random House. So this, within days, it's important that we listen to these little voices that we have inside us that go, not you, you're not qualified, because the truth is, whatever that is a gift. It's giving us a message of a subconscious block that's there that we can release, that we can read, that we can look in the face and say, actually, I don't believe that. I don't believe that at all. I'm letting that go. And amazing things happen. So all along the way, if some thought came to mind, who do you think you are? You're the mom of 6, and I would.
You are?
That voice and not dismiss it, because we're kind of taught to push it away, right? And go,
that does not help
think positive, right? So to rather say, I see you, and this is what I think about that. That starts the healing process, and it has been tremendously important.
So before we talk about the book, I want to know about this mom of 6 thing. How did you, oh my God, because I'm a mom of 5, and salutes to you.
Yes.
Props to you. But how did you link the way you were dealing with your family with all, because this is a lot of flying and stuff, right? It's a lot of time, it's a lot of effort, and you become very driven because it's a cause, not a business. And a cause will always drive you further and harder and faster.
It's true. I'm glad you asked that, because there is a correlation with 6 people whose personalities are different, their needs are different, their skills are different, their talents are different, and you adore them all. You really do learn that diversity is a powerful thing. You really do get to witness that actually, and you learn different ways to communicate and skill sets that teach you how to correlate a lot of different calendar schedules and different kinds of things. Because I've always been a bit driven. I was running a nonprofit before this one that I founded, a writers association and conference. And so we did that together. They came with me.
Yeah.
They were in charge of the snack room, which meant more snacks were needed. They ate
them all. Yeah.
And so actually these things do correlate. I really did know how to create playbooks for people, how to invite people to use their strengths. And it really has been part of the capacity that I built from. The hardest job in the world is being a mom.
Oh my
I
God.
thought,
Just tell me all about it. My kids used to come to like with my first book, and I would be at fairs, like at health fairs, talking about when you go and take your stand, and my kids would be there, and then they'd wander around, and I'd be like, go tell me what's interesting. And then they'd go, and then they'd come back and they'd go, Mommy, we told that man that you were here, and then he does this, and we think that's really clever. So we told him to come find you. And people would come to me at the end of the thing. They'd be like, your kids came to say hello. I'm like, okay then. Because they were locked up in this room, right? And all the guards knew not to let them out. And I was like, as long as you're in here and there's one exit, we're good. You can just keep walking and come back and check in on me every so often. And you'd have them all holding hands, hand in hand, going down and wandering around. Wow. They had the best time. People would give them all kinds of stuff, to shiny stuff, and they'd come back glittering. And it was so interesting. But it's true. It's very true. They came to those places with me because that was part of what I was doing. It was what I was doing it with them, right?
That's right. And then they see the strength and the witness that you can make a difference. Just keep going, show up. They get to watch that, and they succeed in their lives because they build on that pattern.
Well, let's hope so. But I see that. I remember, because I've always been an advocate or an activist. I think I was advocacy when I was politer and activism when I was less polite. This is kind of how I differentiate. And I look at my kids and I see that in them. And it makes me very proud. I like that about them. Talk to me about your book. Where can people find the book is called
The Power of Days. And it's a story of resilience, dignity, and the fight for women's equity. So if you love women's equity issues, if you are a person that's doing a nonprofit and wants a pattern of how to build a movement, and honestly, most of the texts and messages I'm getting are about how much it's changed their lives to deal with trauma in their life, to deal with family healing, to overcome things that have happened to them. So it's been lovely to hear people say that it's changing their lives.
Yeah, and you have 123 5-star reviews, which is just insane. I absolutely love that.
That's such a joy to read them. I confess I read them.
Yeah, that would be like, I would be reading that to go to bed instead of whatever the heck else was going on. It was phenomenal, Celeste. Thank you so much for coming on as a guest. How do people find you if they would like to know more with you and about you?
You can find me on social media or my website, celestemergens.com. And Days for Girls is just daysforgirls.org.
I love that. Thank you so much for joining me and for, literally personifying inspiration and activism and advocacy in every word that you do and say.
Thank you. That's very kind.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. My name is Geeta Sidhu-Robb. This is Activate Yourself. And isn't that phenomenal that you can hear someone change the lives of millions and millions and millions of people and still continue living life, right? I feel like we think that in order to help people or have impact, social impact or any other impact, we somehow have to, burn everything down to go do it. It's just not actually true. Here we have a fabulous example of a woman who had 6 children and went off to do all of this stuff because everybody's child sort of became her child, right? And everybody should be helped. And I think like that too. I've always thought like that. I think it's really important that there isn't a difference between my child and someone else's child. Whichever child you can help, you do help. And so I hope that inspired you. I hope it left you smiling. I hope it left you happy. I hope it left you Googling, people, Googling, donating and doing all that stuff. And I will see you again soon.
Thank you so much for joining us. Our goal was to give you pause, make you think about your life, and inspire you to say, wow, what if I tried to do that? If they can do it, so can I. Did it work? Let us know by finding us on social media at Geeta Sidhu-Robb or at Nosh Detox. We upload new shows every 2 weeks here, and if you start to miss us, check us out on YouTube.